Hey, so today we're jumping into something really cool called MedScene AI. It's a project that's built on a pretty wild question. What if all those hours you spend watching medical dramas on TV could actually be your best study tool? Let's get into it.
I mean, think about that for a second. It's a bold question, right? So many of us, and especially aspiring doctors, are watching thousands of hours of these shows. What if all that passive screen time could be turned into an active, honest-to-goodness classroom? Well, that's the big idea we're going to unpack.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like a joke, doesn't it? But when you look at the sheer volume of medical dramas that students are watching, you start to see this huge, untapped educational opportunity just sitting there.
Seriously, we're talking thousands of hours of what are essentially simulated patient encounters. They're absorbing all this complex medical jargon, watching procedures. The raw material for learning is definitely there. But, just watching something is exactly where the problem starts.
So what's really stopping students from turning all this screen time into study time? Well, it turns out there are a few key hurdles that create this massive gap between just watching a show and actually learning from it. The learning tools students have right now they don't bridge that gap. I mean, textbooks are often totally decontextualized, right? They're missing the human stories that make medicine so compelling in the first place. Then you have clinical rotations, which are incredibly important, but they're also super competitive and limited. And a quick Google search, well, that usually just gives you generic and sometimes unreliable answers. It leaves this huge void for students. And this, right here, is the heart of the problem. Students feel like they're picking things up from these shows, and they probably are, but that knowledge is messy. It's disorganized, it's not clinically verified, and you can't really build on it in a systematic way. It's like learning by osmosis, but with no curriculum to back it up.
So this is the exact challenge that a team from a Stanford and DeepMind hackathon decided to tackle. And their solution is called MedScene AI.
The idea is just so elegant. It's an AI tool that acts as your learning companion. You can feed it pretty much any medical scene, a screenshot, a bit of the script, maybe even a YouTube clip, and it takes that raw entertainment and turns it into something genuinely useful for a medical student. So here's the magic. With just one simple input, the AI gives you back this four-part analysis. First, it tells you the clinical situation happening on screen. Then it pulls out the key learning points. Third, it explains the decision-making framework, why the doctors in the show did what they did. And finally, it links you to a clinically validated resource like Wickham. It basically creates a whole mini lesson from a single TV scene.
Okay, so how does this thing actually work? Let's take a quick peek under the hood, because the technology stack that's powering this is surprisingly simple and smart. The whole setup is really straightforward. The brain of the operation is Google's Gemini model, which is key because it can understand text, images, and video. That's what the multimodal part means. The backend is a standard Flask and Python setup, and it all runs efficiently on Google's cloud platform. Pretty neat. Now, for anyone who's into AI, this is the really elegant part. They didn't do any expensive, time-consuming model fine-tuning or use complex data retrieval systems. It's all built on just really, really good prompt engineering, which is then checked and validated by a clinical expert. It's a lean, clever solution that focuses on accuracy instead of just raw computing power.
But an idea this innovative doesn't just come from code. It comes from a really unique collaboration, a meeting of two very different worlds of expertise. MedScene AI was born in a super high-pressure environment, a hackathon hosted by Stanford and DeepMind. And that origin story really explains its design. It's a focused, powerful tool that was built to solve one specific problem and solve it really, really well.
And this right here, this partnership is the secret sauce. You've got Ki-Hong Ruan, the AI and machine learning expert from Cornell, who provides the technical engine. And then you have Dr. Chandu Karati, an emergency department physician, who provides that critical clinical oversight. It's this fusion of expertise that makes the tool not just innovative, but also trustworthy.
Okay, so before we wrap up, we have to talk about something that's absolutely critical here, the ethical guardrails. Anytime you have an AI that's offering medical insights, you need to have very, very clear boundaries.
The creators make one thing crystal clear. MedScene AI is an educational tool. Period. It is not designed for diagnosis, it's not for clinical recommendations, and every single output is clearly labeled that way. You got to think of it as an interactive textbook, not as some kind of digital doctor.
So what are the big takeaways here? Well, first, it's a brilliant way to turn passive screen time into active learning.
Second, it bridges that gap between dry theory in a book and a memorable story on screen. And maybe most importantly, it shows a powerful new way to build safe AI for specialized fields. You combine the advanced AI with direct validation from a human expert.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If medical dramas can become a classroom, what else can? Think about it: historical films, courtroom dramas, even nature documentaries. This whole approach could completely change how we learn from the media we're already watching every day. The possibilities there are pretty fascinating to think about.